I've always had a fascination with abandoned places. The allure of history frozen in time, the quiet solitude, and the thrill of stepping into the unknown have always drawn me in. So when I heard about the old tower just outside of town, I knew I had to see it for myself. The locals had a name for it, Blackspire Tower. It rose like a jagged shard of obsidian from the surrounding forest, its silhouette stark against the overcast sky. Stories about the tower varied. Some said it was a lookout from ancient times. Others whispered of dark rituals performed by a reclusive sorcerer who once lived there. Whatever its true history, one thing was certain: no one from town went near it anymore. I arrived at the edge of the forest late in the afternoon. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. My car was the only one parked at the dirt pull-off, and as I stepped into the woods, the crunch of my boots on the underbrush seemed unnaturally loud. It was a half-hour hike to the tower, and I followed a faint, overgrown trail that wound its way through the trees. The deeper I went, the quieter it became, until the only sounds were my own breath and the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. When I first glimpsed the tower through the trees, my breath caught. It was taller than I'd expected, its stone walls dark and weathered. The windows were narrow slits, like unblinking eyes, and the top was crowned with jagged battlements. The closer I got, the more I felt a strange unease, like I was being watched. I dismissed it as nerves and pressed on. The tower's entrance was an arched doorway framed by crumbling carvings that were too weathered to make out. The heavy wooden door hung slightly ajar, revealing a yawning darkness within. I hesitated, my flashlight trembling slightly in my hand, before stepping inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell, damp stone, and something else, something acrid and metallic that made my nose wrinkle. The beam of my flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing a circular room with a spiral staircase winding up the wall. The floor was littered with debris, fallen stones, rotting wood, and what looked like the skeletal remains of small animals. A chill ran down my spine, but I forced myself to move forward. As I climbed the stairs, the air grew colder. My footsteps echoed strangely, as if the tower's walls were too eager to carry the sound. The staircase seemed to go on forever, and I lost track of how many floors I passed. Each level was similar: small, empty rooms with broken furniture and ancient graffiti etched into the stone. The higher I climbed, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. On the 5th or 6th floor, I found something odd. The room was larger than the others, and in the center stood a stone pedestal. On it lay a book, its cover blackened and cracked with age. Against my better judgment, I approached it. The writing inside was in a language I didn't recognize, the letters angular and menacing. The longer I looked at it, the more I felt a strange pressure in my skull, as if the words were trying to force their way into my mind. I slammed the book shut and stumbled back, my heart pounding. That was when I heard it. A whisper. It was faint at first, so soft I thought I might have imagined it. But as I stood frozen, straining to hear, it grew louder. Words I couldn't understand, spoken in a voice that was low and guttural, yet somehow seemed to come from everywhere at once. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment I was plunged into darkness. When the light returned, the room was empty, but I knew I wasn't alone. I fled up the stairs, too panicked to think of turning back. The whispers followed me, growing louder with each step. By the time I reached the top floor, they'd become a cacophony, 1,000 voices speaking in unison. My head throbbed, and I could barely see through the tears blurring my vision. The top of the tower was an open room with no ceiling, exposing me to the gray, stormy sky. In the center of the room stood a stone altar, and behind it, a figure. It was tall and cloaked in shadows, its features obscured. But its eyes were two pinpricks of light, cold and unblinking, fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees buckle. I don't remember screaming, but my throat burned as if I had. The figure raised an arm, and the voices rose to a deafening crescendo. I felt an invisible force grip me, dragging me forward. My flashlight clattered to the ground, its beam slicing through the darkness to illuminate the figure for the briefest moment. What I saw will haunt me forever. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, gray and mottled like rotting flesh. Its mouth was a gaping void, and from it spilled the whispers that had chased me. As I was pulled closer, I felt a cold unlike anything I'd ever known, a cold that seeped into my very soul. With the last shred of my strength, I tore myself free and bolted down the stairs. The whispers followed, but they were fading, as if the tower itself was reluctant to let me go. I don't know how I made it back to the ground floor without falling, but when I burst through the door into the forest, the voices stopped. The silence was almost as terrifying as the noise had been. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the tower standing stark against the horizon. For a moment I thought I saw a figure standing in the doorway, watching me. I've never gone back to Blackspire Tower. I don't even drive near the forest if I can help it. But sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers. Soft, insistent, and growing louder. I don't know if they're real or if my mind is playing tricks on me. All I know is that the tower took something from me that day, something I can never get back. And I'm terrified it once more.